Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Persona Compendium, a series where we take a deep dive into the Velvet Room archives to discover the fascinating origin behind each and every persona. Today, we are going to cover the next group of starting personas, Goemon, Johanna, Necronomicon, and Milady. If you haven't seen episode 1 yet, I'll leave a link in the description. If you enjoy this one, you'll definitely enjoy that one. Heck, it might even be better, who knows, you'll have to check it out yourself. With all that out of the way, let's bring on our first persona.
Goemon!
Yusuke's main persona, Goemon, is based on the real-life Ishikawa Goemon, a Japanese outlaw who was known for stealing gold and other valuables and giving them to the poor. He might be the OG gentleman thief, if you remember that archetype from the last episode. Goemon was alive from 1558 to 1594, a period in Japan known as the Sengoku period, a time of constant civil war that spanned from 1467 to 1615. Goemon often traveled around the Kansai region, nearby where Kyoto is today. Only few specific details are known about Goemon, but many historians claim that his motives revolved around the death of his father, who was killed by the Ashikaga shogunate. So, like any good anime character trying to avenge their father would, he took up ninjutsu in order to one day take his revenge. At some point later in his life, Goemon moved up to the previously mentioned Kansai region and joined a group of thieves, bandits, and others who opposed the royalty of Japan. This is where the famous stories of Goemon robbing the wealthy occurred. He would steal precious valuables from the shoguns, samurai, and others of similar status, and disperse them among the poorer areas of the city. Now, this is where things get muddy, because stories would make you believe that Goemon gave these riches to the poor as an act of charity, but it's entirely possible that this was done as a diversion tactic to throw the authorities from his trail and blame the peasants for his crimes. Was he a good person? Was he cold and calculated? A little bit of both? You have to decide that for yourself. Goemon was caught during an attempted assassination on Japanese warlord Toyotomi Hideyoshi and was sentenced to execution. The execution is one of the more memorable parts of Goemon's story, as he was cooked alive in a cauldron of boiling oil. His newly born son was actually executed alongside him, but Goemon was able to save him by holding him above the cauldron. The son survived and was actually pardoned and allowed to live. Goemon's story is the basis for a lot of traditional Japanese plays, and his name lived on for many years after his death. Goemon's design is one of the more intricate ones we've seen so far. The classic Japanese styling used in Goemon's face is directly based on the ukiyo-e style, the style that comes to mind most often when thinking about traditional Japanese art. This could be a direct reference to Yusuke's status as an artist. There is also lettering on his robe, reading Ixikaba, which is a reference to one of the earliest accounts of Goemon's thievery, where he was addressed as Ixikaba Goemon.
Johanna!
Makoto Nijima, aka Queen, aka Best Girl, has the starting persona Johanna, who is based off of Pope Joan, who was supposedly the first and only female pope who led the church during the Middle Ages. You might realize I said supposedly there, and that's because historians actually have no idea if she was real or not. Wild, right? So take every fact in this section with a grain of salt. Who knows what's true and what's not? According to the story, Pope Joan posed as a man in order to become pope. If you're not aware, the Catholic Church doesn't really like the idea of a female pope, and that's the reason that there hasn't been a legitimate one to this day. The first mention of a female pope is in the writings of Martin of Opava from the 13th century, which cites a pope named John Anglicus who was secretly a woman. He claims that her cover was blown after she gave birth to a child while in the presence of other members of the church, and died while doing so. Supposedly, the story was covered up afterwards to preserve the integrity of the church. Martin of Opava never used the name Joan. The name was picked up unofficially as a female alternative to John. For many years, the story was believed as undeniably true, and the church picked it up as a cautionary tale. Today, historians lead more toward the idea that she never existed, but there is no evidence to prove it either way. Many other instances of a female pope show up in writings across history, but due to the mysteriousness of Joan's existence, it's impossible to determine if any information truly ties back to her, or it's just a copycat story. Johanna's design is a strange case, considering she's depicted as a motorcycle with a face on it rather than a humanoid figure like the others we have discussed. In all of my research, I could not find any reason why a motorcycle was chosen for her design. Even the face on the front of a motorcycle doesn't bear any characteristics of a pope. Guess you can't really go wrong with a cool motorcycle, though.
Necronomicon!
Necronomicon, who belongs to Futaba, is our first persona not to be based on a human of some sorts. It is based on the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead originating from H.P. Lovecraft. For those of you who have never heard that name before, H.P. Lovecraft is a horror writer prominent in the early 1900s, known for writing stories centering around ancient, all-powerful creatures that have supposedly been lurking in our world since ancient times and are controlling our lives in mysterious ways. The Necronomicon contains information on these creatures, which Lovecraft refers to as the Old Ones. It also gives instructions on how to revive them from their deep slumber, although no one has been able to do so in any of Lovecraft's stories. It is stated that even reading the book is dangerous. The name Necronomicon comes from the Greek words nekros, nomos, and ekon. Nekros means dead, nomos means law, and ekos means image, coming together to form an image of the law of the dead. The book made its first appearance in the 1924 short story, The Hound, where it is referred to as the Forbidden Book. The Necronomicon was seen again many times in Lovecraft's stories, and its origins are later described. The book was written in 738 by an Arab who studied the Old Ones. The writer died mysteriously after writing his book, and it was later translated into Greek, giving it the name Necronomicon. The book, and many of Lovecraft's other ideas, have a, quite literal, cult following, and many replicas of the book have been published, attempting to convince people that the book really exists. Looking at Necronomicon's design, you can see that they chose not to make the persona an animated book, but a UFO instead. The UFO doesn't tie into Lovecraftian lore specifically, but the same idea of rumored mysterious creatures can apply to both aliens and Lovecraftian creatures. Something that is directly pulled from Lovecraft, though, is the tentacles coming out of the UFO, which are very reminiscent of Cthulhu, the most famous of the Lovecraftian creatures.
Milady!
The last persona we're going to talk about today is Milady, Horror's persona. Milady is based on the fictional character Milady de Winter from the Three Musketeers. No, not that Three Musketeers. The Three Musketeers was a famous novel written by Alexandre Dumas in 1844. The story centers around a main character named D'Artagnan, who meets and befriends the famed Three Musketeers. They then need to work together to stop an execution plot against the Duke, led by none other than Milady de Winter. The book was a commentary on the state of the French government at the time, specifically the Ancien regime, a social structure present in France at the time. Milady's role in the book is that of a French spy who infiltrates England, posing as an Englishwoman to get close to the Duke. She is described as a seductress, similar to Carmen from our last episode. Spoiler warning for an almost 2-century-old book, Milady is revealed to be the ex-husband of one of the Musketeers, Athos, and she actually picked up the name Milady from him. Her true name is never actually revealed. Her plan to kill the Duke ends up working in a way. She seduces a straight-laced Puritan man and convinces him the Duke is persecuting the Puritans, and the man ends up killing the Duke for her. After her plan succeeds, she flees to France, but is tracked down by the Musketeers and captured. She is proven guilty with the fleur-de-lis on her back, a mark that brands her as a criminal. She is executed for her crimes at the end of the story. Looking at Milady's design, there's not too much to point out. The main focus is the big pink dress, which is loaded with weaponry, which may be a reference to how Milady may look unassuming, but is actually devious and dangerous. Her lack of a head might be a reference to Milady's execution in the book, which was a beheading. And that does it for episode 2 of the Persona Compendium. I have truly been having a blast making these. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it too. I love the wide variety of topics covered in just the first 2 episodes. We've talked about everything from Sherlock Holmes, to pirates, to Batman, to Japanese thieves, to historical mysteries, to H.P. Lovecraft. Next time, we'll be diving into the individual arcana, starting with the Fool. I want to come back and do the ultimate personas for Persona 5 soon, as I know those are going to be interesting to talk about. Apologies for the wait between episodes. These things take a while to write. Of course, if you like this video, please subscribe, so you'll be sure to be around for when the next episode drops. But until then, stay safe out there, everyone.